Hey guys, it's Quirky Turtle here, and this is episode 1 of my beginner's guide to Ember. Today I'll talk about weapon modifiers and Ember tree upgrades. Let's get right into this. Starting with the Ember tree. So what is the Ember tree? The Ember tree is where you buy all your meta progression upgrades. The first options here are the health upgrades. The first upgrade is thick skin, which will give you a maximum of 30 max HP. The second option here is regeneration, which will give you 5 HP after completing a room that had enemies in it. Now the last option here is Earned Vitality, which in my opinion is the best one, where you gain 10 max HP after beating a boss or mini-boss. The next category here is the Slayer category. So there's two options here, either Slayer and Giant Slayer. Slayer is always going to be the best option unless you're really struggling with bosses and mini-bosses. Slayer allows you to deal 20% bonus damage to all enemies that aren't bosses or mini-bosses. Now, Giant Slayer allows you to deal 20% bonus damage to mini-bosses and bosses. The next section of upgrades is the money upgrades. The first option here is Pocket Change, which is by far the worst option possible, which will give you 150 starting gold. Moving on to Easy Money. Easy Money is the best possible option if you want to do multiple loops, because you get 100 gold every time you enter a new world. The next one is Dividends, which is the overall best option, because you gain 15 gold per room until you make a shop purchase. So, if your first shop is really bad, so you don't buy anything, you can move on and keep getting that 15 gold per room, once again, until you make a shop purchase. The next sector here is the damage upgrades. The first option here is Fury, gain 40% bonus damage when you are below 25% HP. The next option here is Confidence, which is gain 20% bonus damage when you're above 75% HP. The last option, and the best option by far, is Earned Power. Gain 10% bonus damage when you defeat a boss. This will stack infinitely if you're doing multiple loops, and is just overall the best one because there's no downside, and yes, it might be slow at the beginning, but you can get up to that 40% bonus damage by the end of the first loop. The next section is the Revive section. So there's two options here, Soul Link and Second Wind. Soul Link allows you to have 4 Revive tokens that are shared amongst everybody, so if you're playing multiplayer, and multiple people are using Soul Link, you all share those 4 revives, which will revive you at 25% max HP. Second Wind allows you to revive once with 100% max HP. This is the one I use, but either of them are very good. The next thing here is Relic Dice. It's really important because it allows you to reroll relic selectors up to 5 times in one run, which allows you to possibly get better relics out of your selector. Skill Dice is also really important because it allows you to reroll for better skills up to 5 times in one run. The last section in Ember Tree is the Relic Selector Modifier. So there's two options here. The first one is Expanded Relic Selector, which gives you an extra option in the Relic Selector. So instead of having 3 to choose from, you have 4 to choose from. Now, the other option is Extra Starting Relic, where your first Relic Selector allows 2 relics to be chosen, which is the one that I use and all speedrunners use. And in my opinion, it's just the best one overall. There's no reason to have an extra option when you can have an extra relic in your run. So that is the overview of the Ember Tree and what upgrades you should be using on a regular basis. Moving on to weapon modifiers. I will tell you what the best modifiers are for each weapon, and I'll do an in-depth video for each weapon later on. For Ember Blade, the best option on the top row is Momentum. Now, moving on to the second row, there's nothing that good here, but Fortune is probably the best one. On the third row, Slice and Stoicism are quite good. However, Whirlwind is not very good at all. So overall, you should be running 222 on the sword. Moving on to the Guardian Bow, which used to be one of my favorite weapons, but now it's kind of fallen off. On the first row, the first 2 are very good. I prefer Quickness, which is the first one. On the second row, Rapid Shot, Spread Shot, and Mark Shot. They're all very good, but I prefer Spread Shot. On the third row, Stasis Trap is completely useless. Volley is good if you're speedrunning, and Bomb Arrow is good for casual runs. Overall, you should be using 1-2-2 or 1-2-3. Moving on to my favorite weapon, which is the Nexal Staff. So Skillful is completely useless, don't use that one. Storm is pretty good, depending on what build you're trying to go for, but I prefer Wisdom. Connoisseur is useless, don't use that. Magic Orb is really good. Luminescence can be good. Auto Orbs is probably the best one. Focus doesn't seem to be that great, but I've been experimenting recently, and Clairvoyance is good for speedrunning with that Frost build. Overall, you should be using 2-2-1 if you want to go Battle Mage, which is high damage, or you can go 3-3-1, which is for fast skill refresh. Now for the clunkiest weapon, which is the Rift Hammer. So on the first row of weapon modifiers, you're going to want to take Smite, which is the third one. On the second row, you're going to want to take the third one too, which is Fissure. On the third row, they're all pretty good, however I've found that Safeguard is probably the best one. Overall, you should be running 3-3-2 for the best results. Now onto the most controversial weapon of all, Razorwind. So on the top row, you're going to want to take Quickness, which is the first one, because the other ones just aren't good. On the second row, you're also going to want to take the first one, which I believe is Proficiency. And on the third row, you're going to want to take Serrated, which is the second one. This will allow you to get the most damage out of your charge attacks, which is the main attack that you should be using. Just to reiterate, you should be using 1-1-2. Now let's talk about Reaper's Toll, the newest weapon of them all. The entire top row of weapon modifiers is all really good. I prefer Shroud just because becoming invisible and becoming untargetable seems really good. Now the second row, there's not a lot of good options here, but Infuse is definitely the best one. On the bottom, they're all good, but the Freezing Slash is beneficial because you can utilize the Freezing build. Overall, you should be running X3X, which means you can use any of the top row and any of the bottom row. Just make sure you're using the third one of the middle row. So that is the complete guide for the Ember tree and the general weapon modifiers that you should be using for each weapon. Now, if you have any comments or questions about these, please comment them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you enjoyed this video and or if it was helpful, please leave a like. And if you want to see more content like this, subscribe so you never miss another video from me. And I'll see you guys in the next one.